All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Marcia Martin. Marcia, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
So awesome to be here, Kevin. I've been looking forward to this. I'm just
I
delighted
have too,
on it. Thanks.
especially after our last conversation. This is going to be
Yeah, that
good.
was fun.
Yes, this is going to be good. Uh, I want to start off by I want to give a shout out to Jennifer because Jennifer Hill was the one that introduced you and I. And, I, I, I mean, that is a testament right there to the power of right relationships, which of course is what this podcast is all about. Because when you meet somebody through a friend like that you've already got a relationship with, and then that person, in this case Jennifer, was like, Kevin, you should really talk with Marcia about doing an interview for your podcast, because I have so much respect for Jennifer, and then you do too. We just came together and we've already had and it's like, Marcia, you and I, for the first time we spoke, it was like we were old friends and we'd known each other for years. And now even for the podcast, we're just reconnecting again, you know.
Right,
It's,
right. You have somebody as special as Jennifer that introduces you to someone, you know that person's going to be special too. So we really
yes.
clicked.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what I want to do is I want to turn it over to you so we can set a little bit of context here. And I want you to be able to talk about, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you're doing and the impact. And also, I want to have you share some of your backstory because you have an absolutely amazing story, and we're going to blow some people away today.
Perhaps it's happened before for sure. What I do is what I've been doing since I was 20 years old, actually. My work is in transformation, and I always say that my life's work is having your life work better. I'm an executive coach and then a transformational teacher and trainer. And from the very, very beginning of my days, my life has been about having people wake up and discover who they are and get in touch with their own personal power and be able to contribute to making this a better world. And one of the interesting things that happened when I was a young girl, as you know, is I was one of the people that started an organization with Werner Erhard called EST, Erhard Seminars Training, which became Landmark Forum. And I was just 24 years old, but I became the vice president and the head of the communication registration division, which meant that I filled all the trainings. I trained all the people that were in front of a group. I handled all the PR. I did all the production of all of the events. So I started by giving guest seminars to people that were interested in finding out about the training in somebody's apartment where the graduates used to sit in a circle on the floor with Werner, and he would teach us advanced processes. And then our guests would go into the bedroom and they would sit on the bed and I would sit on the dresser leading the guest seminar. That's where it
Wow.
started. And then, of course, within months, we kind of really made a difference with people. And we were producing so many breakthroughs that pretty soon we needed hotel rooms and then we needed conference centers. And I was filling auditoriums with 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 10,000 people.
Wow.
And over a
Wow.
period of about 10 years, when I was with Werner and Est, I helped bring the graduates from that 30-person, first 30-person single seminar to millions of graduates worldwide. And as a result of that, it was very interesting. Many of the thought leaders that are well known today, like Jack Canfield, Tony Robbins, Marshall Thurber, people that have their own courses wanted me, like John Hanley, who started LifeSpring, wanted me to come and help them. And so I was at the beginning of helping and building and creating many of the transformational programs in the human potential movement. So I kind of have been called the godmother of transformation. I
Uh-huh.
guess that's because I'm so old now. I don't know. And what I do now is I take all that work of how the mind works, how you think, how to be a better person, more effective human being, how to think and how to cause things to come into existence, how to create results and design futures that you want, how to really manage your own life rather than being the effect of the circumstances, but really knowing how to take a stand and then cause the circumstances that you want. That kind of technology and understanding of how a human being works and what a human being can do and how powerful you really are as something that can create is something I've now taken into corporations. And I work with Fortune 1000 companies with
Okay.
their senior executives and work with them in championship performance, communication, relationship, and how to build teams that are powerful and alive. So I love my work. I'm very
Yeah.
inspired by it for sure.
Wow. Very cool. So, what is an example? And you don't necessarily have to reveal any names or identities if you don't want to, but what is an example of a result that you have helped a client get that you're just incredibly proud of, Marcia?
Oh, there's so many, and they're small and they're big. It's anywhere from when somebody says, "Oh, I want to get a new house, but I can't afford it."
Okay.
And I start talking with them and teaching them about abundance mindset rather than scarcity mindset and how one can create. And all of a sudden, miracles happen. And they say, "Oh, I can't believe this. I just happened to run into somebody that happened to know somebody that happened to have something that this miracle happens." And it's so often that it gets to be normal. But it's other things too. It's like the work I'm doing in Cancun next week. I'm going to be in Cancun for a couple of weeks working with a large hotel chain and really working with their senior executives. And
Okay.
when you put a huge organization together and it has to come together fast, and they're all people from different kinds of backgrounds, different educational kinds of capacities, different places they've lived in the world, and have them be a team, sometimes it gets to be more competition than collaboration.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
work that I do is to bring them together and to show them how to create a team. I teach the executives what to do and how to communicate and bring their teams and transform them into a team that can work together rather than compete or be
Yeah.
siloed.
Yeah.
So those
Wow.
are some examples.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay. So now that we've got a little bit of context here, I'm gonna switch gears just a little bit.
Sure.
And I'm gonna reiterate the question around relationships.
Yeah.
So, Marcia, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Well, I feel I've lived a very charmed and um, just blessed life to have had so many fabulous, amazing mentors. And so there are several people that have changed my life. When I
Okay.
was a young girl, my aunt was a clairvoyant healer and an esoteric astrologist. And
Wow.
I worked with her from the time that I was 19 until I was almost 23.
Okay.
She taught me how to heal. She taught me how to distribute energy. She taught me about the chakras. She taught me about meditation. She taught me how to think. And she taught me how my job in life was to teach people how to love, which I don't think many people get, that their job in life is to teach others how to love. Your job in life is to be a plumber or a this or a that. But she said to really cause another human being to be the kind of human being that takes care of people as if it's their family is of the highest order. And she even said that I was a light worker. That was the term that she used. I always thought I was kind of like a white witch with all of the things that she taught me. And in those days, I didn't tell anybody that I could create magic.
Mhm.
And then I met Werner Erhard, who was the founder of EST, which became Landmark Worldwide, and was with him for almost 10 years. And he really taught me so much about championship performance, about how to think, about how to manage people, about how to connect, about how to communicate. There are so many things, but one of the things that he gave me, in addition to all of that, and being a mentor for me personally, was he put me in a place where I met other mentors that then became my mentors. So people like Buckminster Fuller. Buckminster Fuller, I sat at his knee. I traveled with him all over the country when we brought him to speak in front of our graduates for EST. It was my job to fill those auditoriums and to introduce him and to explain to the graduates who he was. So I got to travel with him and be right at his knee and by his side and learn from him. It was extraordinary.
Yeah.
And then, of course, so many people took the S training from so many dynamics, from business, from Hollywood, from science, from politics. And so I got very close with Jerry Weintraub, who was one of the greatest producers, film producers of all time, and has won so many Oscars. He's the person that produced Karate Kid, all the Ocean's movies, Aaron Brockovich, on and on. And so he taught me different kinds of skill sets. He taught me how to make films. He taught me how to be powerful, how to swim with the sharks, so to speak, and how to stand up on my own and how to utilize my power when I was with people that seemed to be more powerful than me and not be afraid of them. And so I have had those kinds of mentors. And my whole life has been about someone that has inspired me. I feel very fortunate and very lucky. And that's why I make it a real priority in life to mentor others, because I know what mentorship did for me. And
Yeah.
my whole purpose now is to give away my wisdom and to teach the young generation how
Right.
to lead. Because I don't think being a leader is necessarily the greatest thing in terms of, you may be charismatic and lots of people want to follow you. That's one thing. But what I want to do is create leaders. I don't need to be followed. I want to create people who can lead. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
some of the people that have inspired me for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So if you look at some of these relationships that you've had, and then we kind of look forward to like a a situation or experience where you personally you got to make a really substantial impact, and maybe even in the moment, maybe even it might have even surprised you a little bit, like, wow, look at what just happened there. And yet you also know that would have never been possible if not for your relationship with whoever that would be. What is an example of something like that, Marcia?
Well, I have so many, but this one is really close to my heart. When I
Okay.
first worked for Werner, he had a program of selling books, encyclopedias to mothers in the suburban areas, and how he trained all of us who were the salespeople and who were the leaders in the EST organization. How he trained us first was had us go door to door selling encyclopedias. And that's where I really learned so much. And I remember he always used to say, you either have a result or you have the reason you don't have the result. What kind of person are you? Do you have results or do you have reasons? Now, I grew up with that. You have to understand, I was only 24 when I first met him, so I was really still a child.
Yeah.
So for me, learning to think like that, it gave me the opportunity to realize how many times I used excuses to, explain away my ability to not produce a result, or my lack of commitment, or my non-perseverance or persistence. And I got to the place where I wanted a result and I was committed to that. And I remember we had this game one time that he said is the commitment game. And I've just written a book and I tell this story in the book. He said, we're going to learn about commitment, but if you want to play this game, then you have to be 100% in. It's okay if you don't play, then just stay home for 2 weeks. But if you're going to play, you got to play all in. And so I said, I want to play. I didn't know what I was doing. I had just started. I was just a wee child of 24. I'm like, oh, yeah, I want to make a difference. And I didn't think it would be that hard. Well, he said, make a breakthrough goal. And a breakthrough goal was something that you felt that was possible, but was beyond your capacity right now. and that
Okay.
you would have to grow into a different kind of human being, be bigger than who you were now in order to achieve it. So I said, thinking I could do anything, I'm going to sell 7 sets of books in 2 weeks. Well, the book packages were $3,500 a piece.
Okay.
We sold them during the day to women whose husbands weren't at home. So that was a pretty big thing to get somebody to do, to spend $3,500 without telling their husband
Mhm.
and not getting permission. So everybody started saying, "Oh, you can't do that. You can't do that." And Werner said, "Let her create her own goals, you know." So I went with a 7. And I remember at the end of 2 weeks, well, first of all, I came home one of the nights after the field around 5 o'clock. And he said, "Have you achieved your goal yet?" And I was getting ready to go home to have dinner. I said, "No." He said, "Okay, well, where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm going to dinner home." And he said, "Oh, well, there's still people awake out in the field." And at that moment, I realized, oh my God, I think I'm playing a game that's way over my level, right? This is something I hadn't intended. So I realized I needed to go back out and go door to door until 9 o'clock at night. And then I remember one of the nights I came back and he said, "Have you achieved your goal?" And it was 9 o'clock. So of course I thought for sure I'm
Uh-huh.
going home. And
Mhm.
I said, "No, not yet." And he said, "Well, there's lots of people awake at the airport." And it was just to realize that there was this way of operating in the world that was past where I was committed to at that time. Now, what happened to me during those 2 weeks, very interesting, is every single thing that would have been okay to be a reason before, that would have stopped me, that would have seemed justified. You know, if I had a headache, well, I would say, "Okay, well, I can't work today. I have a headache." Or if my family said, "Well, we need you at home." Well, then of course it's an emergency. Well, then I can't sacrifice that for something. Or if, there's so many reasons that we have that take us off focus. And every single one of those came up for me to experience during that 2 weeks. I got a headache. I got my menstrual cramps. I was tired. I was angry. My boyfriend said, "If you don't come home for dinner at least one time this week, I'm going to break up with you." My family called. A girlfriend wanted me to help her. I mean, usually all of those or any of those would have been okay and
Yeah.
enough reason for me to stop.
Yeah.
But because I was in this game, I started persevering anyway. And something very interesting happened because at some point there was something down deep inside of me that just kind of cried out, that said, "Geez, just let's get the job done and stop screwing around." And there was no reasons after that.
Yeah.
It was just pure commitment. Now, what happened was on the last day of those 2 weeks, I'm walking down the street and a police car comes along. And the policeman looks out the door and says, "Are you soliciting without a license? Do you have a license to sell?" And all I was thinking of was my goal, but I was a little upset that this policeman was there. I said, "Well, no." And he put me in the back seat of the police car, handcuffed, took me down to the police station, fingerprinted me, and put me in a jail cell.
Wow.
But all
Wow.
I could think of, Kevin, was one more order and I achieved my goal. And I remember I was just not, I wasn't upset. I wasn't off center. It didn't throw me because I was so focused. I remember looking out of the jail cell to see if there was anybody out there. And I saw this man sitting at a desk and I said, "Excuse me, do you happen to have any children?" Well, he did have children. And by the time I got done talking to him for the next 45 minutes, he bought the books and I
Wow.
achieved
Wow.
my goal.
Yeah.
So, I learned a lot from that kind of
Yeah.
experience for sure.
What an awesome story that is. And what an awesome there's lots of lessons in there, but I think the biggest one is just around what our commitment level really is to what we say we want.
And what else I realized and I learned during those years was that most people look at the circumstances in their life to determine what they're committed to.
Yeah.
One of the things that Werner taught me, and I learned by practicing it and by realizing that it was so true to how the world really works, is that if I took a stand and decided what my commitment was, rather than looking at the circumstances, but looking in my heart what I was actually committed to, I could cause the circumstances that I needed. So it gave me a different way to look at life for sure, coming from my commitment rather than coming from looking at the circumstances to see if I could do anything.
So do you mind sharing an example of that from your own life of like where you caused that shift to happen because of how you showed up?
Well, let's say I remember this one time that this couple came to my guest seminar, and we were kind of taught that if they said they wanted to do it or they thought that they would get value, then we expected they would enroll.
Uh-huh.
And so I looked at all the enrollment cards at the end of the seminar and I didn't see their card. Well, normally the circumstance that they had left and it was late and they were gone would have allowed me to realize that what I could be committed to was, well, I guess they didn't enroll. But it's not how my mind worked by then. So I said, well, did anybody talk to these guys? Did they say anything? Yeah, they said they were going out to dinner. So I took the girls with me that were on my team. I said, we're going to find them. And we were in some town that we didn't even know where we were, what was there. We went to 4 restaurants. We ran in to see if they were there. We went to any restaurant we could find in the area, ran in, see if they're there. No, they're not here. Okay, back in the car. Next restaurant, next restaurant. Fourth restaurant before we ran in and there they were. And then we said, oh, what a coincidence. Gee, it's so great to run into you. And we sat down and talked with them. And by the end of the evening, they enrolled and filled out their card and gave us a deposit.
Yeah.
So that's an example of my causing something rather than being at the effect of the circumstances.
Yeah. 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 That's really powerful. That is really powerful. And how we look at things is a lot more powerful than I think a lot of people even realize that we how we show up that's really important
Yeah.
and because when we show up the right way and we're just like confident in what we're doing, confident in the value that we bring to the table for the right people, and all of that stuff is there, and now it changes. Like you said, now it's like, well, I don't have excuses to not do this because like I would be depriving others from that if I were to do that, and who am I to do that, and
I think there's another lesson too, which is how you look at something, your perspective or your mindset actually creates the way something occurs or shows up for you. I know we've all seen that, that picture where there's an old woman and a young woman at the same time
Yep.
in the picture.
Yes.
And if you look at it one way, you see the young woman, but if
Yep.
you look at it just a little bit different, the old woman shows up.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
to me, that's the lesson of the universe because I consider everything is in reality. Everything is out there. Abundance and scarcity, things working, things not working, getting it done, not getting it done, being right, being wrong, having enough, not having enough. It's all there at the same time, just like the old woman and the young woman are in the picture at the same time.
Yeah.
However, you can only see one or the other at any one instant. You can't
Oh,
see them both together. You have to kind of look from a different vantage
yep.
point or a different perspective. And then what will happen is the young woman will show up for you or occur, or the old woman will show up or occur. And that's the same way with your perspective or your mindset as a human being, depending how you're looking at it. If you're looking at it, this can't happen. Well, what shows up for you is all the reasons it can't happen, and you get
Sure.
all the in the universe, right?
Yeah.
But if you're looking from, I'm finding the way it can happen, suddenly you'll find that thing that shows up for you.
Yeah.
But if they're both there, you can find both ways to debate the situation
Yeah.
if you want to,
Yeah.
but your mindset or your perspective is where it starts. So, I teach people how to manage their mind. And that's another thing I think people haven't been trained to do is manage their mind. That people's minds are like a juvenile delinquent and they're just running wild, right? Like a teenager out of control. And we just think something and we think, oh, that's me thinking. And that's what it is because I thought it. Well, think about it. If you're thinking it and you're saying it to yourself, well, who's listening? It can't be you because you're the one listening, right?
Yeah.
So it's not you, it's just some background noise. And why would you have background noise that doesn't cause you to produce the results that you want? Why would you say to yourself, I can't do this, or I'm too little, or I'm too afraid, or I'm not enough? I mean, I don't think that's a good thing to feed into your brain.
Mhm.
So I teach people how to manage their mind and manage their thought process and really look to have a mindset that they choose, not one that just has been given to them or taught to them because their parents came along and said, hey, this is the way it is.
Yeah.
Well, that might have been the way it is for them, but perhaps it could be a different way for you.
Yeah.
So that's really important, your perspective.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. You know, I really appreciate you taking the
Oh,
time to have this conversation today, Marcia. And my goal always with this podcast is it's twofold. I want to give you, the guest, the opportunity to honor some people in your life that have been so influential for you. And then for the listeners who are also entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs, I just want to use these experiences and these stories to inspire them to place
yes.
an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own life. And with your help today, we definitely delivered on that, Marcia. And so I
Thank
want to
you.
thank you for that. For anybody that's listening to this, going, man, Kev, you were right. This was really good, and I really love Marcia. I love how she shows up, and man, I would be curious to hear more from her and find out more. Any resource, any websites, and I know you got a resource because I'm privy to this. I want to make sure we do talk about that too and stuff. So
Sure. Well, my website is marciamartin.com.
okay,
It's Marcia, Martin.
okay,
It's Marcia, not spelled SHA, but CIA. MarciaMartin.com. And if you go there, there are tabs and you can find out about me. You can find out about my programs, about my coaching, about my corporate accounts. And you can find out about the new book that I just wrote that's going to be coming out on Amazon. It'll be available July 17th.
okay.
The name of my book is Sex, Power, and Transformation. And it's the untold story of EST and the human potential movement from myself, the woman who helped make it happen. So a lot of people don't know, how did we take a 30-person single seminar and how did it explode? What did we do? What happened to cause it to be a cultural phenomenon and be a movement in human potential, that out of which came so many programs from all of the things that you can think of out there now? A lot of them came from EST or a derivative of EST. And how did we get it to the place where it was millions of graduates worldwide? There's over 3.5 million people who have either done EST or Landmark now.
Wow.
And what was that about? And how did that happen? So this is my memoir, and it's a story of the human spirit, because I'm like everybody else. Things happen in my life that are hurtful. And I ran into people that betrayed me. I had things that I lost in life. I went through a divorce. I had a stepchild that committed suicide. I lost all my money at one point and didn't know what I was going to do. So there have been those moments when it looked like I couldn't make it. And yet, because of my training, because of the work I did with my aunt, because of what I learned from Werner and Buckminster Fuller and Jerry Weintraub and my mentors, I've always come from any experience that happens is a gift. And so I have gone through those things and risen from the ashes. And the human spirit is so strong. Anybody can do that. So my book really allows people to be inspired and see a way to be powerful, even in the face of obstacles and breakdowns and despair. And I hope everybody will read it. And they just go to my website, marciamartin.com, and push on the book, the tab, the book, and they can get on the pre-order list or get instructions of how to get it from Amazon on
Okay.
July 17th.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Marcia, once again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Really appreciate it and really appreciate you. So thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. That is really special, Keith. Kevin, I really appreciate you too.
Absolutely.